Yeah, I hear you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll continue on from after the video with the spiel that I was supposed to give as executive officer. Let's get started. All right, internet access. To view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You will be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You may fill in this field with any entry in an email form, for example, janedoe@gmail.com. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on top of your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about the agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish speaking. Phone access. If you cannot get internet access, you may get audio-only access by calling the phone number listed at the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you will be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you will be asked to either enter your panelist number or wait to be admitted into the meeting. You will not have a panelist number, so please wait until you are admitted into the meeting. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specific date and time. This information can be found on the board's website. Instructions to attend the State of Hawaii virtual board meetings may be found also online at the board's website.
The board will now take roll call. Members who are attending virtually, when I call your name, please confirm you are present and whether you are alone. Lorna Hu, licensed member.
Present.
And are you alone in your space?
Yes, with a toddler.
Dr. Brian Chen, public member and otorhinolaryngologist.
Present, and I'm alone.
Thank you. Members in attendance in person, please confirm you are present. Vice Chair Raw. Present. And I, Erin Furman, Chair of the Board, am present as well. Having met quorum with 4 members present, including 1 public member, this meeting is called to order at 2:09. I will now ask our executive officer to provide his report regarding the licensing of speech pathologists and audiologists in Hawaii, including but not limited to administrative matters such as licensing procedures, disciplinary actions, and legislative session summary.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to keep it brief. The licensing of SLPs and audiologists has been ongoing this year since November. We have had some slight delays in certain cases, usually based on deficiencies, but otherwise, generally, we've been trying to maintain licensing about 40 to 60 days after initial submission. The provisional licensure continues to be usually submitted for review twice a year, usually prior to the semesters, I'm guessing of they're in, or just getting out of, or actually I should apologize. are getting placed into. The legislative session was very minimal for speech pathology and audiology this year. I believe there may have been a compact bill that was submitted, but I do not believe that it really had any traction at all. The legislature was focused on accessibility for licensure, I think, but they were more focused on the provisional licensure for psychology and other mental health fields. Let me see here. As far as disciplinary actions, I have not had any reports, and we continue to have no, I'm sorry, the settlement agreements coming our way for the board to review. So, so far since we've only met since last year, not too many things have been happening that are abnormal or issue driven. So that would be it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, approval of meeting minutes for November 7th, 2023. Regarding this agenda item, is there any attendees wishing to provide testimony? Seeing none. Hearing none. Members, do you have any questions, corrections, or comments on the meeting minutes of November 7th, 2023? Okay. Hearing none with no questions, corrections, or comments, I motion to approve the meeting minutes as is. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Does any member object or abstain from the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 4, applications. Regarding this agenda item, both sub-items A and B, is there any attendees wishing to provide testimony? Okay. Seeing no attendees. Oh, let's see. Can we go over the ratification list attached to the board's agenda? Is there any member with questions or comments? Okay, hearing none with no questions or comments, I motion to approve the ratification list as is. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Does any member object or abstain from the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to sub-item B, speech pathologist by examination. The board will enter into executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-5A1 and 92-5A4. Is there something? Okay. To consider and evaluate personal information relating to individuals applying for a professional or vocational license cited in section 26-9 or both, and to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. May I please get a motion to go into executive session?
Yes. I motion. Oh, yeah, I motion for us to enter executive session.
Can I get a second?
I second that.
Thank you. From the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Members joining remotely, please remember to exit Zoom completely and move over to Teams. Please call the support staff if you have any issues while logging into Teams. Okay, the board will now take roll call. Members who are attending virtually, when I call your name, please. Okay, forget. Please confirm you are present and whether you are alone. Lorna Hu, licensed member.
Present and alone.
Thank you. Dr. Brian Shen, public member and otorhinolaryngologist.
Present and alone.
Thank you. Members in attendance in person, please confirm you are present. Vice Chair Rawl.
Present.
And I, Erin Furman, Chair of the Board, am present as well. Members, can I get, I'd like to motion to approve the application pending receipt of corrected and complete verification of clinical observation and clinical practice verification form for Mary Angelica Rufino, speech pathologist by examination. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Does any member object or abstain from the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 4. Board administrative matters pertaining and planning. The board would like to review its current matters, including review and possible update to the application process, including review of EO delegations for applications approval. 2, update the legislative board liaison for next legislative session. 3, board position vacancies and the process for applying. And 4, subject matters being researched by the board and EO, such as updating license requirements and statute and administrative rule in this state and others. Regarding this agenda item, is there any attendees wishing to provide testimony? Seeing no attendees, we can talk, let's maybe talk about number 1 first. Review and possible update to the application process and EO delegations. So shall we look at the delegated authority? So right now, our executive officer is authorized to approve applications with a first offense DWI, provided that the applicant has documented compliance with all orders issued by the court. And a third delegation is authorized to approve restoration applications only if a licensee submits application and fee, no licensing requirements have changed, and there is no derogatory information on their license. So what we are looking at now is possibly adding to that list of delegations for licensure by examination, provided that all of the requirements have been met.
Yes, right now I know it's generalized on my sheet because it's just for my own personal notes, but authorized to approve applications excludes examination applications. And it was specific to a board meeting. I can't remember, several years ago, when we updated things. However, since that time, we've had growing, I wouldn't say growing concerns, but just growing awareness that the board meetings with the level of membership we have are much more difficult to establish in order to address these applications. So therefore, the idea is to try and provide a delegation that authorizes the executive officer to approve certain applications of examination that qualify on a certain standard. Therefore, so that it doesn't have to wait for a meeting and they can just be licensed. Going through the requirements for applications of examination, an applicant is required to pay the license and application fee upfront. They also have to supply the application form. They have to supply 2 verification forms, one for clinical practicum and also for clinical fellowship for the fellowship year. They also are required to submit 3 letters of recommendation, their transcripts, and proof that they passed the praxis exam. The board's authorities in HRS 436B allow it to, I believe it's 436B, allow it to delegate certain functions to, say, the executive officer, so long as those actions don't require deliberative knowledge. So that knowledge would be the knowledge you all contain, being licensed professionals in the profession that you are presiding over. So I do not have that. And I couldn't make that judgment on behalf of the board. That will always stay with the board. Yeah. Oh, no, it's okay. So the question is whether an examination application has deliberative knowledge requirements to review that application. If we use the application we just reviewed as an example, the application form itself is just its demographics and some history of licensure and education. So there's no deliberative knowledge really. It's just marking off information that we place into the database for someone's for their license. The clinical observation and clinical practicum verification requires the applicant to have their supervisor fill out the dates, the date range, the number, the length, so like 1 year, the total hours, the position held, and the name of training institution, address, city, state. The supervisor of the clinical program, or not, sorry, the clinical director, sorry, the program director or the supervisor can sign this form. There is a brief summary, sorry. There is a brief summary that's required, and I think that would be where the deliberative knowledge would come in. So one part or one place we would have to look is the clinical observation and clinical practicum verification form. And if we can get past the deliberative knowledge there. Typically, how we've done this in, say, psychology is to ensure that if there is specific language in the statute that needs to be addressed, like this person need to ensure that their practicum was in the practice of speech pathology, as opposed to, say, clerical work during that practicum. We would want to ensure that the information we're getting is that it was actual the practice, not clinical, like clerical stuff. That might be included in those summary letters. Typically, it's not because they're focused on what they did, right? But we just want to make sure that it was within the language of our statute and rules. If that gets hit, if all those get checked, then there's potential that the deliberative knowledge is not required for you to address and assess whether this practicum met the requirements. The same goes for the fellowship. The letters of recommendation, this is another spot where deliberative knowledge may be needed. However, they are fairly general most of the time about the person, and they are going to be, I don't know, in my mind, it seems like a sort of, I wouldn't say biased, but it is catered towards them being licensed. So they're going to promote the person. So whether or not there's no information in there that needs to be deliberated over, I'm not sure. I think that these questions would be ones that the board itself would have to answer. And you would have to ask the questions of me or Chris in order to ensure that we can get a delegation solidified that is, sound.
I would think in a, for letters of recommendation, as long as there's nothing negative or perceived to be negative in them, you could probably, I mean, like you said, they're already biased to support, and no one's gonna ask someone to write them a letter of recommendation that's gonna be bad. Right, so that I don't think that that's something that you need specific knowledge for. They're either gonna recommend them or they're not, right?
Okay.
So,
Does the board feel if there is deliberate knowledge with the summary of duties?
on the form,
So for example, you can use the example of the affidavit of supervisor in the application. Typically what we see.
it's either gonna be there or it's not gonna be there, right? It's a number of hours that are required.
She provided the duties in there as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
Would we be able to
and
provide a checklist of, um, you know, possible items that you would see, duties that you would see with that? Or is that?
You could, but I believe that from my work with the Board of Psychology, it really, if you want it to stick, you really need to put it into rules or statute. So you could make an informal opinion about what it should be placed in there, but you couldn't deny someone off of that. And really what you want is that authority to deny and the authority to approve. So, one question is if that summary of duties is actually written into the rules and the statute. Because it might be an additional administrative thing the board asks for, but it may not be required for license. And that is something that we gotta ensure before that delegation vote can happen.
right.
So I guess I'm requesting that we be prepared for November for a delegation change, if possible. But I wanted to bring this to your attention and to stew over the next meeting.
Are there any questions or comments that you guys have? Dr. Chen and Lorna?
So, so Christopher, in general, when you do the kind of review for psychology, have you had any issues or problems that have come up?
Well, part of my delegation is it's very specific. So if I have any questions when I'm reviewing an application on my delegation, I immediately just stop and it has to go to a meeting. So no, we haven't. No issues of accidental licensure or anything like that. It's been mostly just whether or not the review putting it into an administrative approval with me was actually correct. There may be something in there that just doesn't allow me to do it, and that therefore it needs to go to a board meeting. Usually it is something along the lines of deliberative knowledge being required. So if their summary is like 2 lines, I can ask them to update it and provide me additional. I can't give them guidance on what they need to put. But if I get something that's more robust, then possibly I could continue. But more times than not, if I see that, it's just gonna automatically go to a meeting. And then the board will will make the request for additional information.
Yeah, because in the past, when we have done approvals, and I know that there's often delays because of our meetings being scheduled. Usually we've never had, I mean, in my term, any issues with, licensees, licensure being disapproved or anything. It's merely administrative. I think that you guys have vetted very well.
Okay.
So I personally don't have any problems, allowing you to do that. Unless people feel like we need another layer or another board member to just go ahead and help with that, and designate in the event that there may be question, just designate the chair of the board. Rather than going through full board to delay the process. That's just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think though the delegation would have to be an either or. So either you would delegate it to the EO or you guys keep it. There could be any additional option where somebody gets designated to review them and approve. They can be designated to review, but the approval would still have to happen at the meeting.
Got it.
I think they can do a recommended, but then
Yes.
the board would still have to approve at their formal board meeting.
Any other questions or comments? No? So I think we can wait until our next meeting to kind of make a decision on this. We can take a little bit more through and maybe between now and then, we'll see how many applications by examination come in, and if that increases significantly, then we might wish to think that might change our opinion about it or not. I don't know.
Yeah. I really, if you can minimize what applications come to this meeting as traditional, then that would be different than, say, having 10 applications on your agenda to review. That would definitely extend meetings, which is not an issue. It's just, that's something to consider and keep in mind.
Okay. All right, on to the second portion of this section, update the legislative board liaison for the next legislative session.
Yes, so traditionally, for legislative session, we've voted to have two people who we consider like a committee for the legislative session. We've adjusted that here at the PVL to a legislative liaison. So the idea is to kind of separate the terms of committee and what the purpose of this two-person group can do. It can be, I believe, two people, it can be one, just like before, it's just, we're changing the name. Also, it's just something that I'm suggesting that the board update. It can be this meeting or it can be the next. I would suggest before the session. So November would be the time. So that gives you a little bit of time to think about it and consider. Again, just to remind people, when you're doing legislative liaison work, it's really a somewhat informal process where you're contacted for additional information or to ensure that the vote that was made by the board in the board meeting is still being presented in the testimony, even though there may have been amendments to the bill. So between meetings, it really helps between meetings is what it is. So, again, that's something that I just wanted to, remind you guys, and then maybe the next meeting would be the time to do that as well. There's nothing stopping you from doing it today if somebody's ready to go, and you can always amend it at the next meeting, but that's up to you.
Anybody have a burning desire to? Yeah. All right, so we can table that and we can come back to that at our November meeting to determine who or how many, if there's one or two people who will be the liaison. Okay. Number 3, board position vacancies and the process for applying.
Yeah, so as you know, we hover on quorum. We do have that additional requirement of the public member. Just to kind of help everyone kind of realize, where things are at is that, it seems to be taking a little bit longer to onboard people onto boards. It's probably just the way things are. It's not anything problematic or anything. It's just taking longer. So keep in mind as you are coming to a close, either on your tenure or if you're deciding to step away, just letting us know. The vacancies themselves are ordered to the profession type and also whether it's a public position. So we do have 2 audiology positions, we have 2 speech positions and 3 public, including 1 MD position. So we currently have 2 public member positions open and one, audiologist position open. I believe, Lorna, your tenure is coming to a close next year, so that's something to consider. The process itself involves just merely going to the governor's website. You'll see an icon for boards and commissions. You can go there and start filling out the application, which is, you can choose a specific board you would like to work or try and be placed on. And then once that is submitted, you can always contact the board direct or have the person contact the board direct so that we're aware, and then can also be checking in to see how that process is going. But that's pretty much the process. Is pretty simple. Anyone can do. Just depends on the positions that are open. So again, if you got anybody you guys are eyeing or you think would be good to help us get through, probably a lot of legislative and rulemaking, then, feel free to shoot them my way.
So I did have a question.
Mhm.
Does the board member need to be a resident of the state, or can they be licensed here but a resident elsewhere?
Good question. We could look at the chapter, without Chris, our AG here. I would suggest maybe holding on that question. And then, hopefully we'll have an answer before November. If he is unable to leave the meeting he's in right now to come here. But
Do we already have somebody coming in for audiology?
No.
There's somebody applying.
someone had applied, but things didn't work out, so they ended up not being placed. So they didn't make it through the legislative session for that. So we still are sitting on you as the only audiologist.
Dr. Chen, Lorna, do you have any?
All members of the board shall be residents of the state.
Oh,
There you
thank you.
Answered.
Question.
Thank you for looking at that.
Okay. Well, shucks then. All right. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that? Do you have anybody you know of?
No, I don't. Yeah, they have someone, but I'm not sure.
It's also just getting this too on the meeting minutes and the video, so people, if they want to review, they might know and then spread the word, so.
Okay. Let's go to number 4. Subject matters being researched by the board and EO, such as updating license requirements in statute and administrative rule in the state and others. So one of the topics that we had talked about was the SLPAs, the speech language pathology assistants. Whether or not we should look into licensure for those individuals. And so we have we can review the dental assistants that we have right now. I think that's you guys have that.
Yeah, sure.
Assistance, okay.
So the information I was presenting to the board today was one option for trying to create some kind of regulation for SLP assistants or SLPAs. I reviewed a lot of the different states. I mean, it's pretty common now, the licensure or some other form of regulating, so a certification, et cetera. And so, with that said, I had remembered that in the Board of Dentistry, dental assistants are not licensed in the state. However, they are written into the rules, for dentists that they can supervise them. But they can only supervise them, on things that they're allowed to do. So those are listed out as I presented here in the research. They also list the things that they cannot do. I remember, I think Lorna, I think you were wondering if there was a way of at least getting some kind of thing, outline of what they can and cannot do to sort of guidance. So that was why I was thinking this. Some major hurdles could be that it's unlicensed practice, like, so the question is whether discipline can happen on a assistant if they're unlicensed. I mean, logic states no. But however, there may be ways of writing the law that would tie their practice to the speech pathologist's license. I'm not quite sure how that would work or if it could, but I need to go and look further at any states that might have that type of scheme in speech pathology, not some other profession. But this is one idea that would avoid we'll call it the joys of legislature of trying to get a new license type created. And also it would also be primary before creating any kind of rules. It would probably have to be something that's statutorily amended into the chapter. So there's a lot of things to look at SLPAs this way, but it could be possibly the easiest, and that's not saying that it's easy, but the easiest way to try and get some form of guidance out there for assistantships.
How do you deal with like teacher's aid? Are they licensed as well? I think not.
Through the PVL, but I'm guessing since it happens and their practice happens within the DOE, that the Department of Education has some form of control over them. I'm guessing as employees. So it's similar to what you have for SLPs who are hired by the state, right? I think there are certain positions that don't require license. Is that correct?
Communication aids.
Yeah.
Or limit their abilities to or what kind of duties that they would perform, you know,
Right.
like no swallowing, you know, very specific, no diagnostic testing, but more, you know, like what you guys would do, Erin, you know, drill practice, and their duties are very limiting, but yet very helpful for a licensed speech pathologist.
Yeah, as I was looking through what dental assistants are allowed to do, I think that we could come up with similar, you know, a bit duties, non-duties that they would be allowed to do. And I think we would have some guiding resources with ASHA.
Right.
So,
And we confer with ASHA to help guide us.
I think Ash has a blurb in there about.
Yeah.
That's right.
They actually do. They have a lot of information.
I've looked at that already. So I'm willing to reach out to them on your behalf, you know, to ask, you know, and, you know, as far as the list of like job duties and descriptions, I think as you go towards like the November meeting, you might think, try to figure out how to categorize the training if something you want isn't within the ASHA recommendation. So you want to try and capture the category that covers them all so that you can generalize your statement and you don't specify it for only one specific act. If for example, I was explaining to Chair You kind of want to balance between too general and too specific. You want to try and find that mean. And so as you're looking at what you believe a SLPA should do or should not do, you should consider making sentences like that and or sorry, paragraphs like that.
But what about other states as well? Do we know of any states that currently provide exceptions, but provide the duties that they're able to do, right? So that can also be an option. Or do we have states that actually do license and they also provide the duties, their scope of practice?
Yeah, I think we can definitely look up. I know California has they register them under the SLP license.
Mhm.
So I'm sure they have, I probably should know that because they have guidance documents about like what they can and can't do.
Okay, I can look there.
Research too.
I tend to not look so much at California because their infrastructure is so large. It's just, we'd have to translate it into something simpler, but I will look there.
So in addition, Christopher, do we do that permitted interaction group as well to help facilitate the whole process, or that isn't necessary?
I actually am, I think I'm gonna ask Chris to update us on the purposes and uses of a PI group, a PIG group. Because they're very specific. We can't just like add new things to it. It was formed for a specific reason. It has to stay to that function. In order for it to fall within the parameters of the Sunshine Law. So what has been recommended is just to create like basically side committees of 2 people or less than quorum. So usually just 2 people that, because you don't have to step out of Sunshine Law for that. And 2 people can meet and talk, 2 members. So I might have him bring that up at the next meeting, and then you guys might want to reform and figure out how you want to address that. Really, nothing changes other than the like basically statements for the board and following the law, but your guys' function is still the same. It's still trying to meet outside the meetings to discuss updates to the amendments in the law and the rules.
Okay. Any other discussion that you'd like to have at this point? Or? All right.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, go
We
ahead.
are, as far as the SIPAs go, we've already said kind of no, that we're not requiring it to be we wouldn't want it to be required to be the certificate, right?
The-
Certified
The license.
license, you know, not, I know we said no for the license, but coming in as like one of the requirements. You know, like Asha's doing these programs for assistants and stuff. You guys didn't really want that, right? For the assistants. The SIPAs, you know, last time we were talking about it, where there are like some programs that are doing it as like a certificate.
Mhm.
That's not gonna be something that we would be wanting to be part of the requirement list, right?
I'm not, unless we're creating a license,
Okay,
I don't think we would have requirements.
for like a degree of some, or a certificate or anything like that.
It would be more regulating what they can and cannot do.
Right, okay,
The practice under the supervision of a SLP.
okay, yeah,
But yeah, if we start asking for certification and credentials, then we basically are asking for to
license,
certify and license them. So,
which we're not.
Okay.
Right. Just to clarify that, because I know we had mentioned it last time and we were,
if in the hypothetical, the board wishes to, and law has passed that SLPAs are licensed, then probably we would look at that.
right,
Do we want them to have certification?
right,
Do we want them to be an option? Same thing as ASHA and examination right now.
okay.
Because right now we have OTAs and PTAs that are licensed in the state, is that correct?
I think so. right?
PTAs,
PTAs, OTAs,
Yes.
COTA, codas.
occupational therapists, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no, they are.
They are.
Send me their licenses.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think we're discipline that does not have anything like that. Correct, Erin? In the schools as well as other places, in the hospitals, of course not.
the only discipline? I'm not sure.
Yeah, nobody's really using it yet, right? As far as the. No, I didn't mean to stir it all up again. It was a discussion that we had started last time, right? And we had,
That's great. Yeah,
I think that's a good question.
that's good
Um,
clarification.
yeah, I think that does need to be clarified if it's not going to be the required thing, especially. Because the ASHA's ones are how you certify somebody through the certification process, right? Yeah.
And maybe
Okay.
Ash should provide us with, information on how we should proceed.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so we have some research to do before our November meeting. I think that it sounds like our discussion is closed for those areas now. We can move on to agenda item 5, our next meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 29th, 2024. There will be a virtual conference by Zoom, and we will also be in person at Queen Lili'uokalani Conference Room. What is it? HRH King Kalakaua Building?
Yes,
Okay.
His Royal Highness.
His Royal Highness.
Oh. Okay, all right, thank you. And we are adjourned at 3:08. Thank you.
Thank you.